Hi there, and welcome to the Crazy House World Championship 2022. This is from the qualifying rounds, round 4 between Fumitoks and pknm. The match is about to start, I think. It's already started. Let's have a quick recap. Fumitoks playing white, starting with knight f3, but quickly switching over to d4 kingside fianchetto. pknm answering quickly with a conservative setup. And off we go. When we look at the previous encounters, we see that Fumitoks is in the lead by 17-8, having won, I don't know, is it like 10 in a row? But I expect the match to be quite close. Fumitoks slightly above 2500 usually, and the pknm slightly below 2500 usually. But at the moment they are quite close rating wise. And if we look at the position, I don't quite like the look of the white setup here. I'm not sure if the early c5 pawn push was the right thing to do here. I've always wondered, why is the bishop at e3? It's such a vulnerable place. Playing c5 gives the bishop on e3 some purpose, because you get a pawn to put on h6 and you can get some sort of kingside attack. But pknm, he plays an active defense, giving up the rook for a piece, which is quite okay. They are worth about the same. And the kingside can be quickly mended by either a pawn or, more actively perhaps, by a bishop. And meanwhile, this c-file is good for black. I wonder if white will go for the queen sack here. I would certainly think about it, but this seems even better. I wonder if black missed pawn at g5. Looks like white is winning some material here. But also giving up the queen by just taking on g4 was certainly a possibility. Let's say pawn takes here, bishop takes d2, and then you keep taking on g4. And what is black supposed to do? The king side is a bit naked then. Okay, let's see what's happening. After pawn g5, black started thinking a lot here. My guess is we'll see something like bishop takes here, knight takes g5, pawn f6, but white can take on g4, winning a piece. So this is clearly favorable for white. So instead black goes for the option of saving the knight, but this defends this knight and also attacks the knight on e5. White could go for something super tricky like knight d6, queen takes, knight takes f7, just to lure the king out. I don't know if it's good though. This seems like a more... But this bishop can take on h7. Okay, so white intends to take on h7, and if you take on d2, the queen is hanging on f8. And if you compare the king safety, obviously white's king is much safer. So here all trades are in favor of white. White can just build up some momentum here. Black has a lot of pieces waiting in line to get on the board. So material-wise, this is not super duper bad for black. It's just slightly worse, but white has all the momentum. I would probably take on f6 rather than taking the queen, because it's hanging on e5. You threaten moves like rook g7. Taking on f8 holds the white attack a little bit, and I'm not sure what to put that queen anyway. Can you make good use of it? Then sure, go ahead and take the queen, but where to put it? So white is trying to open up the position. There was perhaps the possibility of taking on h6. King takes, rook h5, king takes, and then putting the queen on h7, making sure the king doesn't get back. Looks like it's mate. But what's happening on the board? Okay, white is going all in here on a light square attack, and it seems like this is a killer move. Black should probably resign here. It's mate in the next move. Very convincing win here by Fumitoks. Let's see what pknm has in store. I like this setup myself for white. As you can see, pknm is quite a cautious player, just playing nice positional, crazy house, not going wild and crazy. Sooner or later, black will have to push either the e pawn or the d pawn. And by getting a grip here on e4, I think black has equalized. Notice that Fumitoks puts a lot of pressure on the clock. He's constantly moving a bit faster than pknm, who keeps falling back on time. c4 looks like a natural follow-up. Although maybe white is hoping that black will trade on g3 and then on d3 and open the c file voluntarily, but I don't think so. Taking on d3 here would be a mistake by black, because it's I don't like this move at all. You strengthen the white center and you open the C file for him. That cannot be good. Welcome those of you who are watching. Quite a crowd. Nice to see you. I think white is enjoying a healthy plus here in this position. Although he will have to work to get the whole point from this game. One idea is, I guess, to push the e-pawn, probably after taking h5, knight takes h5, and push the e-pawn. Where is this knight going then? Isn't it trapped? So I don't quite understand what they're doing right now, but white should probably be a bit better. Still, these bishops are a bit sleepy at the moment, but as soon as the board opens up, they will get dangerous. So black has managed to solve the problem with all the knights. Perhaps it's not so bad anymore. White taking a pawn here, but he's letting go of the initiative, and this is a strong place for that bishop, eyeing the white king's position. And I expect maybe sacrifice on g2. Let's try knight g2, knight g2, bishop takes g2, king takes, knight h4, and the attack is going on. When the king goes back, you have stuff like queen a8, maybe trading queens as well. Okay, so he's just building up the pressure here. Look at those bishops. This turned out to be a boomerang attack for white. He went pawn chasing, and now he seems he thinks he's forced to give up the queen for a piece. So material wise, white is doing fine here still. He probably needs to put a bishop here somewhere, or maybe a rook on the g file, just to get some security here on the white squares. And this is a problem for black. White could very quickly start putting pawns here and queen them. So black goes all in here. He wants to mate white. And white needs to be very careful here. One little slip and it could be over. Let's say pawn takes, knight takes, knight takes. You don't take back with a rook, I think. I think you spend a move trying to... But this is letting white off the hook, isn't it? A little bit at least. Although pknm is down on time here, he needs to move fast. Probably give up the rook here for f3. He's down to his last few seconds. And this pawn will come in handy for black, who closes in, and I think black will win this. Tremendous pressure here on the first rank. Adding another rook to the attack. And now take f1, knight e2 check, or the other way around. Picking up more material for free. And now you could just go queen d1, yeah. Why not put more pressure on the first rank, winning yet another piece. Threatening knight f2 mate, so yeah. That was an interesting game, and I think... Sorry, let's look at it from the other perspective. I think white was doing quite fine here in the opening. Maybe knight e2 wasn't the best move. No, that was very passive. So this looks okay. And I don't like taking on d3. No, just put something on e4. This threw away. At least I think so. Maybe the computer doesn't quite agree, but this gave white a slight edge. But moving the queen away from the action, I don't like that. Yeah, this was what I mentioned. Take here, and I was thinking e4. The computer says g4, but is there something wrong with e4? No. This would have been very good for white. So let's go back. Fumitoks in the lead 2-0. And we see yet another kingside d4 fianchetto, delay d4. Here white has traded on f3, starting an early h-pawn rush here up the board. But it's hard to get away, get this blocker away from h4. And it's putting pressure here, quite annoying pressure on this knight and pinning it. Keeping control for white, who has a semi-open e-file. Yeah, but knight f5 maybe. Is that a problem? Or do you... Because that threatens h4 and d4. I'm thinking, or am I? Knight f5, bishop g6 maybe? How is bishop g6 here? The idea is knight, queen takes e6, so bishop g6. Obviously you can take on f5 if black does nothing. So if you take, queen takes e6, is this dangerous? Or am I just hallucinating? Because then you can maybe take f6, put something on f7. Maybe there's an attack. Or maybe I'm just being optimistic. He does play bishop g6. Okay. So let's see what has up his sleeve here. But can that really be good? I mean, how about simply taking on f5 now? Let's say black takes, you trade on e7 and then simply pawn f7, and it looks like a devastating attack for white. Because now black has g5 and e5 covered. I like the idea of queen takes f5 earlier. So feel free to throw in comments here. I'm always curious what you think. Is knight e6 followed? No, that's not a thing. But can you maybe take here first? Rook takes e7, knight takes e7, knight e6, knight g5, going all in. Or maybe you take with the king here. Yeah, that could be better. So still he checks there, and he sees the e6 square. But the king hides on h6. Although this is very, very close to mate now. So do you push the f pawn maybe? This is less forcing. I'm pretty sure playing f4 or yeah would have been better. But then again, what do I know? Black has a shitload of pieces in his hand. So can he wrestle his way out of this? He is bound to win his first game. Is there a threat? Yeah, queen takes g6, mate. I guess that counts as a threat. That looks like a cool defensive move. White trying to create some confusion here. Should black take the knight? Maybe white will go g4 then. The black king is still a bit naked. Black instead trying to open up for an attack. Looks like black has everything under control. Except his clock. And now white is probably threatening to take on, why didn't he take on g5? Isn't that dangerous? So I think they're trading bad moves with each other here. Yeah, probably in pawn here, queen g1 should be an unstoppable attack. Probably so maybe use the first rank for a check. But he's lacking a bishop to finish black off here. Does it need to take on d3 maybe? Because now he's tucked away in the corner. Can you take on c2 maybe? Yeah. Desperado attack, but maybe it works. Maybe it works. I thought rook d2, take on b2 maybe. Epic game here. Ending by rook at b5. Oh, 57 moves. Look at that. So, what happened in the opening? I thought white had everything under control. Even queen takes e6 here. Okay. Yeah, look at this. Queen takes e6, f takes, and bishop g6. This is a very nice attack. Okay. Queen f8, and you take here, and black cannot take back because of the knight fork. So that's a very nice idea. Instead he went for bishop g6. And this is super good. I was thinking, oh, it's made in 6. How is this made in 6? Let's look. Sorry. Trade, knight takes. Yeah, look. Knight here, knight goes back, and queen here, and it's made on e6. I spotted this mating pattern, but I didn't see it was forced. That's a very nice mate. So I was thinking the same after this move, and this is very strong as well. Yeah, queen takes f5. I was thinking like this, and then pawn here, and if you take here, you have the same mating idea like this. Okay, so what happened then? White has a huge initiative here, but this was not the best, maybe. Or maybe it is good still. Queen takes e6, queen at e6, and then pick up the knight was the way to go. And after this stuff is just unclear. Let's see if black missed knight at g4. Was there a mate with okay, several mates missed. But it almost looked like white was safe here. Yeah, rook at d2 was the correct move. But black never lost the forced mate. So what's this? Let's have a look from the beginning. Notice that here he traded on g6 quickly. And this makes castling short slightly less tempting for black, maybe. A lot of trades here. And why didn't he take on e5? Because of pawn d2, I suppose. Okay. So white has given a piece for 3 pawns. And we're back live. Fumitoks has more time. which is nice. And you don't want to go pawn picking here because of bishop at d5 when g2 is hanging. So instead he goes for this tricky move, but I wonder how is bishop takes, rook takes, and then knight takes g2, rook takes, bishop takes. Does white have anything in this position? Because otherwise it looks good for black, I think. Instead he takes on d7. And here there are plenty of interesting ideas for white. I'm not sure if they're good though, but I mean, you can pick up the rook. If, let's say, black threatens the queen, you can just take on f8 because you have pawn h7, followed by a rook g8. So, fancy little check here. If king takes, you have knight f4, picking up the queen. And it does look very strong. White needs to move here, and taking the rook is bad. Probably moving the king is bad too, but you need to move. Threatening to take the knight because of the pin here. Also it covers e2. But look, only 3 seconds left here for pknm. And you might consider maybe, no. Fumitoks down to his last few seconds as well. And I'm wondering if he's starting to mess things up a little bit. No, now the attack looks just crushing. Black is completely safe. You can just pick up a few pieces and then finish off in style. Mate in the next move. I missed the mate in one, but who cares? 3-1 Fumitoks. And pknm, you need to make some adjustments to your game plan, or this is going to end soon. So in this move, In this game, he didn't go for the kingside fianchetto. Fumitoks, he's playing more conservative setup. This is looking very double-edged. Because now you can simply take on e5. This is looking bad for white, I think. Simply knight at g6. Protecting the knight on e5, and eventually you just pick up the knight on d5. So I think it's a quite healthy extra pawn for black. Okay, so you get the bishop here and you got a check, but the king is quite safe here, I'd say. Bit dangerous to open the position like this with the queen still on d7. I would have felt much safer if the king had gotten to c8 already. What about a bishop check here on h3? Just to try to keep the king in the center. So a long think here by Fumitoks. Maybe he's worried about pawn g4. Is that the move? Maybe pawn g4 you can take with the pawn, can you? I was thinking take with the pawn, bishop takes, and then simply g5, and what does white put? Because then you have threats against f6 and e6, and yeah, very murky position. So here what do? Do you go all in, just taking twice on e6? Or what do you do? White reckons that the king in the center will provide some long-term compensation. But now you have maybe knight e2 taking g3 just to get rid of some tension. Also knight at g5 is a nice defensive move. Or knight at f4 even. Looks like black has a very safe retreat here on the queen side. Question is, do you keep your bishop? No, just use the tempo and trade for a rook. So black is enjoying a nice lead material-wise, but he needs to pick up some pace here and put the pieces on the board. He's trying to create some kind of wall here in front of the king, and now these two bishops are pointing towards the white king side in a vicious way. And if I was white here, I would probably insta move, take, pawn d5 and see what black does. Because a draw here would be perfectly fine for white, I think. And now you can start building with pawns here, and this is just lost for white. Take with a knight, and you have a rook check here on d5 that protects all the checks. Oh, just leave the knight hanging, create some threads of your own. Black is a bit nervous here. Yeah, that's probably a good move, forcing white to put something on the board. Now he doesn't have any diags. Now he has a bishop. But that bishop won't do much harm. So that should be the end of it. Now white has knight checks on f2. What is happening here? Okay. Black is not playing the perfect defense here, but he's playing a defense that he knows will ensure him the victory. He's just putting pawns, pieces on the board, and just capitalizing on his huge material lead here. There is nothing Absolutely nothing that white can do about this. Knight g6. Or this. So 3-2, and as I predicted, this will be a close match. Nice win for pknm. So what do you predict, those of you who are watching? Any predictions? A very symmetrical line. This is an interesting check. Provoking c6, but black doesn't fall for this trick. Although I don't know if having the knight on d7 is the best square. They should have sort of trampling on each other's hooves, these two knights, and this is a very passive bishop position. And white just keeps hammering those black squares. But is he getting anywhere? I'm not quite sure. I thought it best just to leave it there. Castle, and looked like black was slightly passive. I mean, this is a move that clearly isn't favoring black at all. So let's just switch to chess for a bit. Castle and be happy. I don't think there are any forced lines here for white. No magical tricks. So at least black cannot castle short anymore. So he will be stuck in the center with the king for the rest of the game, but that does look like a decent option anyway. So now the rook can step back and join a semi-open h5. Although obviously it's too late to castle. The computer never forgets that you've moved your rook already. After a few beers in a home game, moving rook to h8 and then try to castle is maybe the way to go. What do I know? Black seems very solid here. I like the rook here, always prepared to sack on c3. Maybe that's the way you should do it. Yeah, take on c3, take with the bishop. Maneuver your bishop back to c7 maybe, put some pressure over here. Just look out for pawn h7 followed by rook g8. And he's just thinking here. There was maybe this possibility. Then take e6. So he got the pawn to put on h7. He got the rook to g8, and immediately it got dangerous for black. Surely you can take on h7, although queen takes and takes. So this doesn't look like anything, does it? Yeah, and now you can finish off with knight h3. This is a forced mate. Nice find there by Fumitoks, who takes the lead with 4-2. He only needs 1.5 points now. But I'm wondering if white missed maybe some chance here. There were some wide lines. You need to be super aggressive here. e4, yeah, just go for it. And what about this? Is it bad? Yeah, maybe it's just crazy. Never mind. Did white miss any more chances? Taking on g6 first looks better, yeah. Because after this, it just seems like black had everything under control. He even missed a mate here, starting with knight h3. Let's get back. And Fumitoks is back to his kingside fianchettoing. It's interesting to see that they traded wins with black the last 4 games. Yes, this is Crazy House. It's a chess-based variant where when you take a piece from your opponent, it changes color and you get it in hand, and you can place it on the board instead of moving one of your pieces on the board. So it's a very fascinating game, which I deeply recommend. And this is a qualifying match for the World Championship candidates. This is the 4th round, and one of these players will go through to the 5th round, and if they win there, they'll be in the candidates. So, white locked and loaded here, eyeing h6. Maybe simply king h7. This looks very aggressive. But black seems to have everything under control here. And given the right circumstances, it could get active later on. pknm once again downtime, having difficulties finding a decent plan, and Fumitoks notices this little weakness and he just plays some natural moves here. Insta moved a4, which probably is not the best move in the position, but it's a move and it puts the ball back on black's court again. So very nice, I think, strong pragmatic move. White is building an impregnable fortress, or at least he thought so. Probably not f4 because of bishop takes, and then knight h5 recovering the pawn on g3. And black is having problem with this clock here. Fumitoks punishing pknm's overconsumption of time. Nice little queen sack there, forcing black to plug a pawn in the hole. Maybe it's best to pick up the rook, and then if the queen takes here, you have knight at g3. Black is just playing with increment now. Maybe knight at e7, forking the queens. Oh, that was probably not good. Simply e8. And no more attack for black. The knight is covering h2. Soon it's gonna be all over. And pknm will face an uphill struggle trying to get back into this match. Black isn't threatening anything, so you might as well. Yeah, he is threatening f2 actually. So now you can take twice here. Knight at f6. And this is a forced mate. Mate in the next move. Okay. 5-2. Fumitoks. So this is probably nothing for white. Maybe you want to prepare castling long, but now maybe knight g2 take h4 is a threat. So why not push the h-pawn one step further? This looks a bit silly to me. It's way too passive. Black is prepared to castle either way. Keeping white guessing where the king will go. So after this move, maybe e5 is a possibility. Before that, white could jump to d5 with a knight. But now the d5 square is covered. So why not go for e5? Or you could go knight a5 and trade the knight first. Instead, black decides to try to trade it for the d3 knight. or at least that's a possibility. Also, knight b4 keeps an eye on d5 in case of e5. Not threatening much. I guess Black could just leave it there. So castling long does give White a target to attack. He rushes his a pawn up the board, probing for weaknesses. But meanwhile, where is White going to put his king? Not so easy to defend the a7 pawn. And if you push it up, eventually, no, you can't push it up because the knight a7 mate, but so check here, go fall back to b6, but now knight d5 comes. This is starting to look good for White, I think. Black realizes things haven't turned out too well, so he goes fishing for some compensation for his queen. This bishop is actually trapped now, and it doesn't seem very easy to get to the white queen. This is in fact starting to look like White is winning. White is a queen up. Simply pawn e3. Black is stuck there with only pawns. Probably queen b3 with a hold on b7, rook b1 check. This is very nice. And this bishop is not a very happy camper. White is happy to give back some material. Just playing positionally. And this is taboo. Rook c8 coming. White could just pick up the a pawn whenever he likes to, but now he's won too much material. I expect that Fumitoks will resign shortly. Yeah. He overstepped the time limit, but 2 match points left for Fumitoks, who's white in this game. 5-3 Fumitoks. Back to his old habits with kingside fianchetto. Will we see d4? Yes, we will. So they're battling over e4. And black would be happy to see white capture on g6, opening up the h file for the black rook. And is Fumitoks getting nervous? So close to the victory. Only one measly little draw or win would clinch the victory in this match. Yeah, how about taking on e3? I'm thinking queen takes, bishop g5. And the opening of the h file should favor black, I think. Now it's pknm's turn to think. Playing eventually a6. And you've seen this before. Fumitoks senses that pknm is getting rocked to sleep. So he quickly responds to whatever pknm is doing. Okay, so here white got 2 pawns for a piece. Question is, do you take on d4 twice? Just to get a couple of pawns for h3, g2? So a very crucial game here. Yeah, why not pawn f3? Okay, so maybe take e2 first. Maybe this quickens the attack. So what to do here, Fumitoks? I didn't quite understand the pawn g6 move here. What's wrong with taking? Taking the pawn? Then you take on f3. And if the pawn takes, you have queen takes e6. I see the point. But you could also just take the queen, I suppose. And just move the king towards the queen side, maybe. Or take the pawn. Why not? And it doesn't look like Fumitoks has enough compensation here. So can you play a move like knight f3 or pawn f3? Knight f3 threatens mate here if the king moves, so white would need to take. And the black forces are awfully close to the king. Here you save the knight for later. pknm just playing on, living off his increment. And I'm almost falling asleep here. Didn't white miss something here? Rook at a7 looks very tempting, followed by knight c6. And instead, black one. Wow, 5-4. What happened in the end there? I mean, surely Yeah, rook a7 is forced mate here. Trading big mistakes. And it's just mate in two. Very strange ending there. And what's happening here? Voluntarily playing d5. This is a waste of time, I'd say. Very untheoretical game. Possibly two nervous crazy house players here. If Fumitoks wins, he goes through. If he draws, he goes through to the next round. But if he loses, there will be a tiebreak. Hi there, Crazy House fan. Yeah, very strange ending there in the last game. Black is playing very provocatively here, eyeing the pawn on b2. White decides it's time to spend a tempo on protecting the pawn. So, from an unusual opening, we have a fairly balanced position. pknm likes to throw in these a3 or h3 moves every once in a while. It's a bit, maybe a waste of time. But he's putting pressure on Fumitoks' clock. And what you do now? If you take, black takes with the knight. Knight and bishop threatening c2. Seems like black is very active here. You should have an advantage. As I said before, Fumitoks only needs a draw in this game. Så vad händer där? I guess I would go for castling king's side. So bishop e2 makes perfect sense. Giving a piece for a pawn and some long-lasting compensation. And maybe it's possible to take on c3 because takes pawn b2 and the whole last or first rank being weak could be an issue for white. Black doesn't need much here to finish off white. Just a pawn on h3 and then just grab any old pawn for g2. Both players trading punches, but it looks like white had a heavier punch in his sequence because now g4 is under attack. Black building up pressure. And pknm oversteps the time limit. How is the final position then? It's very, very, very good for white. And that's a shame. Because now pknm lost 6-4. But congratulations to Fumitoks, who is through to the next round. Sorry for being a bit tired, but I've been sick all week, so I'm just doing my best. Thanks for watching. I'll see if I can find somewhere someone who we can raid, maybe. Let's see. Let's raid Zaraza. Are you guys ready to raid her? Let's do it. Thanks for tonight and see you around soon. Bye bye.
Президенты, каждый по своей дорожке, что оба сверху не смогут попасть. Ну да. Я думаю, можем закрыть наш стрим. Да, Заря Гнейс подписался на меня, спасибо большое. Завтра Терра будет играть. Во сколько? С Австралии кто там у нас? А, у нас этот Мастертан. Мастертан, да, вау. Угу. Вот Шура и он играет. А во сколько они? Вечером, по-моему, 7:08, что ли? Нет, 2 часа дня. 9 по Австралии. Это на работе было. На работе.